You're listening to the Modern Saxophonist Podcast.
Welcome to the Modern Saxophonist Podcast. I'm your host, Mark MacArthur, and today we have J. Michael Holmes on with me. How you doing?
I'm great, Mark. How you doing, man?
Really good, really good. It's a little earlier here out in Las Vegas, but I'm sure it's possibly a little sunnier and a little warmer than where you're at.
I can't speak. The sun is out here today in Chicago, which is a bit of a rarity during the winter, but it is cool, so I will give you that.
Very nice. Yeah, we've, that sunshine, when I've been up there for like the Midwest Clinic or anything, actually that's about the only time I've been to Chicago, I have to admit. I think that certainly is one of those things where I need to get up there. My wife and I were talking about how much she would like to see Chicago and shop, but she doesn't want to be there at that dead of winter. So,
well, no one really wants to be here in the dead of winter. We'll put that out there. But yeah, it's an incredible city. There's a lot to do, and I would highly recommend for anyone to come visit. It's a really great place. So.
It really is. It really is. One of my favorite things that I really love to do with Rochelle is two things. I'd love to take her to the Chicago Symphony, of course, but then I'd also love to take her to the blues clubs, because there's nothing like the blues in Chicago.
Yeah. We got a few of those, and the Chicago Symphony is not a bad band to listen to either. So.
That's right. We're going to get to talk about that a little bit today, and I'm excited. But first, hey, for all our listeners, we got to meet. You actually came out to Las Vegas for our NASA regional that was hosted, I can't remember, 2010 or 11, somewhere in that neighborhood. And you were working with Con Summer at the time, right?
Yeah. So I worked for both Van Doren. That was kind of my start into the music business world, being a product manager for them. And then I went from there and worked for Con Summer, mostly with Summer Paris, but Con Summer, and was a product manager for Saxophone with that organization. So I think I was out in Vegas when Prism was there, and we just kind of got to hang out, and it was a great conference. We had a nice time.
It was a blast. That was a nice welcome to teaching to college for me conference, and I remember Tim McAllister saying, "You got to really host this next time." Like.
Yeah, the big one. You meant the big one?
No. This was at this is at a regional when when Eric Lau had hosted it in New Mexico. Yeah. So he's sitting there going, "You got to really host the regional next time, Mark. Come on, man." I'm like, well, all right. I hosted it. It was awesome, and made a lot of great friends. And you're one of them, man. I really enjoyed getting to work with you while you were here and talking, and I've been kind of a little bit of a stalker, watching your career as you've progressed here in the last few years and everything that you're doing, and
okay, that's a compliment, right?
I think so.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
No. Yeah. On the Facebook world, man, I gotta tell you, it's sometimes it's funny. You go and things pop up in your feed, and for some reason yours always seems to pop up. Maybe because I've liked a few or whatever, but it's always fun to see some of the world travels and the performing opportunities that you've had a chance to be a part of. And so we get to talk a little bit about that today. And one of them is the Chicago Symphony. I think I just noticed that when we talked about this, that you had just gotten back from a tour to Europe with the Chicago Symphony.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I was able to be a part of the 3-week European tour that we just did, basically encompassing most of the month of January. So we left on January 9th to Paris, and then I returned from Baden-Baden, Germany on the 27th, I believe it was, of January. So almost 3 full weeks over in Europe touring and performing. So,
wow. Now,
yeah.
I'm just speaking for so many saxophone players out there that is way too little of a description. because I don't know. A lot of us have definitely heard the Chicago Symphony. A lot of us have, imagined ourselves doing that. But I've got to say that it for a lot of us, it's kind of it is the gold standard, especially in America, for a group to have an opportunity to play along with. I mean, it's hard to find a collection of musicians more capable.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. My colleagues in that organization are brilliant. They're also wonderful human beings. But, for me as well, I remember coming to Chicago. I grew up in Ohio, but I came to Chicago for the first time with my family. I think I was probably 13 or so. And I remember we were on a bus driving down Michigan Avenue, and my parents were miserable. Like, they're just not big city people, and this was my first sort of foray. And, I grew up in the country, so this was a really big deal to go to the big city. And I remember just being completely eyes wide open this entire experience. And my mom was, kind of oodgy. She was just sort of, not, she was a little anxious about it. But, this was something for the kids, and I was just so excited. And I remember going past the Art Institute and saying, "Mom, that's the Art Institute." And she's like, "Oh, that's nice." And then I remember we drove past. No one tell her I said this, by the way. No. But then we drove past Symphony Center, and I see this space where the Chicago Symphony plays, and I said, "Mom, that's where the Chicago Symphony performs. That's it. That's it right there." And I remember her saying, "Oh, they have a symphony here?" And I was like, "Yeah, they have the symphony." So that was my first time, and then I came to Chicago when I was doing my undergrad at Bowling Green with John Sampen, and we came here on tour with the Wind Ensemble, and this is maybe my sophomore or junior year, and we got to take a tour of the facility. And so this was like early 2000s or so, like 2001, I want to say, and we came here and we played with John Hagstrom, trumpet, with the Chicago Symphony, and so we got to see the facility. Now, we didn't get to perform there, but we got to actually go in, and I remember sitting on the stage, and I told some of my friends, I was like, man, someday I'm going to sit here. Someday I'm going to play on this stage. Now, little did I mean or know that I would ever be performing with the Chicago Symphony. And in 2013, I got my first chance to play Romeo and Juliet under the direction of Riccardo Muti with the Chicago Symphony. We did a recording, 5 performances, and that was... I remember that I've told this story to some very dear friends, so I guess I'll tell it to my saxophone community friends, but I remember sitting on the stage during the first rehearsal, and Charlie Vernon, the famous bass trombonist, taps me on the back of the head with his trombone. I'm sitting right in front of him, and he says, hey boy, you might want to put some earbuds in there. You might want to protect those ears. And I'm like, oh no, I'll be fine, Mr. Vernon. Everything will be fine. And sure enough, he goes and he starts playing, and man, that guy can put some air through the horn, and he sounds brilliant, but I'm overwhelmed. And then I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, I've got to play these C sharps. I've got to play those C sharps on tenor saxophone, the ones that everyone frets over for years and years, and I'm doing it here on the stage of Symphony Center in front of the Chicago Symphony with Riccardo Muti. And I was preparing myself to faint. I was just preparing myself to my blood sugar's low. Something's happened. I'm not well. I was coming up with these excuses in my head about what I was going to say the moment I had to literally pick myself up off the floor. And, muscle memory kicks in after a while.
Right.
Luckily. And I was fine. I didn't pass out. I was not harmed from my first experience, but, it's a pretty cool experience. It's been a life dream of mine, to get to work with them. And so then to do a 3-week European tour with them was, it was life altering. I don't know how else to explain it. It was really, truly life altering.
That's incredible. And that is the type of experience I mean that what's great is like sometimes how we dream and how we put forth our what do we want to do someday. And that was just an incredible personification of what that means. And sometimes it's interesting where some folks may get an opportunity like that, but it's like, I do this here, I do that there. It's not like one of those personal experiences like this has been a life goal. And here's this, and just hearing that story, I definitely am glad that the saxophone world gets to hear that because you sit in the audience, and my favorite place to be is in that choir loft whenever you get a chance, and because I love getting to see the musicians working and just right there seeing the violins and the percussion and just everybody working hard, and then you look at the conductor and get to see the conductor's expressions and how everything moves. One of my favorite performances was Boulez conducting Mahler 4, and getting to see all of that transpire. It was incredible because there is something to how a conductor just the presence, and there isn't a more responsive ensemble to that than Chicago. It's it's right, and I sort of lovingly say that I absolutely had the best seat in the house during those performances because, as a saxophonist, we are blessed from time to time to be able to do these performances, and I'm so glad and I feel very humbled to represent the saxophone community when I sit on that stage. But when I get to sit there, the other thing is there are many times when we sit, we play our solo, and then we're done. And so I had 3 weeks of sitting on stage in some of the world's greatest concert venues, watching the Chicago Symphony and getting to just watch Riccardo Muti the entire time. Well,
and so
I don't even know if we mentioned yet, but I'll let you say it. But what was the excerpt, and what piece were you actually performing?
Sure, yeah. We did Mussorgsky's Pictures and Exhibitions, so I was actually performing that. So, and as many people know, you sit through basically, it's 2 movements plus a couple of promenades, but it's basically, you're the second sort of full movement in the piece, and it's a giant saxophone solo, which is so great. But you sit for about 5 minutes, and then you play this large extended saxophone solo that lies in the middle register of the saxophone, which is both wonderful because of the key center, but also difficult because the pitch of the orchestra tends to be much higher than what we're used to.
Right.
And the first note you play is a solo. And so we were doing Mussorgsky on this tour, and then you sit for about another, once you're done, and you can imagine the adrenaline that's going through your bottom at that point once you end on that last note, and then you have to sit for about another half hour and enjoy the remainder of the performance.
Right, and then you're surrounded with this amazing sounds, and you get to you literally get to turn your brain off and enjoy, because it's different when you're having to perform. I remember doing a performance of that here with the Las Vegas Philharmonic, not Chicago Symphony, but love my colleagues that play in that group, and it was so funny. My friend Andy Smith, who's the principal cellist, and here we are backstage, and I play the solo. He comes up to me, he's like, "Oh, beautiful solo, man!" And I'm like, and he's like dripping sweat, and he's just like, it looks like he just ran a marathon. And I'm sitting here going, that was nice, man. Hey, all right. I'm completely relaxed, and I'm just like, man, you guys are working hard out there. I mean, come on, you should have just played saxophone, right?
It's at once both the easiest and the hardest job, I think, in the orchestra sometimes, because you're an extra, so the expectation is very, very high, and when you play, it's extraordinarily exposed. But then, you get the rest of the time off, and it's nice to just sit and enjoy, those moments, and getting to hear Chris Martin play the trumpet solos, and just hear that incredible Chicago brass every night in these amazing, truly amazing venues. I mean, it was just really, like I said, it was pretty life altering. I'm still kind of pinching myself after the experience, walking away from it. So.
Man, it is so much fun hearing. So, what is your now? What's your favorite excerpt? Now, you got to tour with this, so that's nice. But but what's your favorite part of our repertoire to play with orchestra that you've had a chance to?
Sure. I mean, I think I've probably performed American in Paris more than almost anything else, and maybe Bolero. Those are the two that come to mind as just being programmed quite a bit, which is wonderful. Those are probably not my favorites, though. I would err on the side of, I mean, I really, really love Prokofiev. I am such a huge Romeo and Juliet fan. And so anytime I get to play that, that's always quite a special thing to do. And then, but my mind instantaneously goes to the Britten Sinfonia de Requiem. The Britten is just, it's spectacular. It's so brilliantly written for the saxophone, and it's very rarely programmed, but when it is, it's just a really, it's a beautiful thing. It's a really beautiful thing. So that may be my favorite. Mussorgsky's always nice. Right. I mean, it just, in Rachmaninoff symphonic dances, and I love doing the Bernstein symphonic, suite from West Side Story, and so, I mean, there's a lot of really beautiful things. So
there are
maybe Prokofiev. I don't know, or the Britten, one of the two.
Well, I think about that Britten, and that's something that's most likely not going to be programmed in a outside of like a top 5 orchestra that has a 52-week performing schedule. And that is something where we, when you get to enjoy because in a place like Chicago, you're getting deeper and deeper with the repertoire. I mean, I think of a place like Las Vegas. There's, I think, six Masterworks series throughout the year, so only 6 weekends out of the year you're getting a full concert type scenario. You're not getting a full schedule, and so when we start talking about repertoire, those types of orchestras have to make decisions to program things that are not necessarily off the radar because of maybe decisions they are for what their audience wants and needs and whatnot. So you don't run across some of those maybe more obscure but beautifully written works that include saxophone. So that's nice that you said it. I think that's well worth a review in a lot of people's books.
Yeah, and I would also say that I think there is a cost factor for many orchestras. I mean, in the fact that you do have to hire an extra many times to come in and do that saxophone part. And I'm so pleased that many the orchestras in the United States, many of the top orchestras in the United States, and even some more of the regional orchestras and things are starting to actually hire, or at least more prevalently hire, a classical saxophonist to come in and do the work, which I am so happy to see, and I hope that in some way I've had a small part in that, because I think that the more that we can show specialists on the instrument coming in and doing the job and doing a great job and sounding great and playing in tune and with good sound and good vibrato and all of those things, the more I hope that composers will take note and continue to write saxophone parts in their orchestral works, because I think it's a really, the instrument was meant to be there. So
yes,
I would love to see more and more of that happening.
It is meant to be there, and in today's day and age, there's quite a few newer composers. I even think of like a Michael Torkey that will freely use a sax quartet, or some other things that are just looking for that extra wind color and using it beautifully. And I think it really is a place where in a lot of ways composers have had to make decisions based on force and based on even quality that happens to exist out there. And I truly do believe that this is a golden age of saxophone for us classical guys that tend to that really have a desire to be able to use this format as our expression. That there's an area, there's a lot of recognition now that it's being played well, and a lot of composers that are writing very substantial, beautiful works.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I feel very fortunate to get to work with, many of those great orchestras around the country and around the world. I've been very, very fortunate to get to do that, and like I said, I sort of wear that as a, I'm very humbled by it, but I'm also wear it as a badge of honor to sort of carry the classical saxophone torch a little bit with me as I do that. I always keep that in mind, and that may sound a little silly, but I really do take that in mind, that I am representing the saxophone community, my brothers and sisters out there that are hoping to do this as well. I mean, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, or however many years ago you and I met, I would have laughed at you if you would have told me that I would have been doing this. I would have said, "There's no way." I mean, in my wildest dreams, of course I was, but it's pretty great.
Well, I think that for me, just okay. So I brought up the Facebook stalking, and part of it is that when I've seen people, and I guess this is my appreciation, I am so honored to be able to have conversations with folks like you that are shaping saxophone today, is that I get to kind of hear it firsthand, some of these experiences that and not only that, it's that care. We do care about the community. I mean, in order to be a saxophonist and think of it in this way, in this classical way, where it's not necessarily the most accepted, and see the fruits of the labor that are happening, out and around, and the appreciation. It is pretty astounding, and we do have some absolutely brilliant spokesmen for our instrument, and if there's anything I've learned in the podcast, it's that we have brilliant spokespeople for and advocates for our instrument who go above and beyond and do top notch work that is worth that notification, just get recognition, I should say. So, yeah. Thanks for the stories. I mean, I got to tell you that just you stand up in front you have a mirror and you imagine the Chicago Symphony Orchestra as you're conducting, and you're like, oh man, one day that would be nice, and to sit there and play along those musicians, and I mean, you speak to that moment of let's go with this here for a minute, because you're also an educator. You're not just a performer. I know that you. So do you mind telling everybody where you're teaching right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've taught it. I've been fortunate to teach at a few universities along the way. But currently, right now, I'm a head of Woodwinds and artist teaching faculty at Roosevelt University, the Chicago College of Performing Arts here in Chicago. And so, yeah, I mean, I absolutely am also an educator.
And with that, I think, you know, in touching on those moments of pressure of, you know, you're talking about that C sharp, you know, being exact on the tenor saxophone and the progressive, and making sure that every detail's there. And you know, if somebody out there listening right now wants to have this opportunity someday in this realm, what are some of the things that they should be working towards? Because it's not just the work that happens, it's not just the benefit of being able to do it. It's just the fact that there are things that you've done along the way that's allowed that invitation to be there.
Wow. I have a lot of thoughts that come to mind. You know, the initial preparation is very important. So score studying is very important to know who you're performing with, both whether it be with the wind section in some form or another, or with the string section in one form or another. So know who your sort of comrades are at that moment that you're performing. That's an extraordinarily important part of it. Listening to recordings. I mean, I wish I could take all kinds of credit, but I can't. There's tons of great recordings, including Chicago Symphony recordings with Fred Hemke way back in the day. You know, and Fred was one of the very first to sort of be doing that. And so listening to recordings and sort of getting your ear wrapped around, you know, we as saxophonists don't get the opportunity. Many people will never get the opportunity, or may never get the opportunity, to perform with an orchestra. But if you do, it's a whole different mindset, and it's a whole different aural sort of sense around you. So immersing yourself in that sound is very, very important. Being aware of pitch center, of course, making sure all the right notes and rhythms are there. That goes without being said. But I think one of the things, if you get the call, that some people may lose track of is get your eyes up. That conductor is the master, and you follow everything that they do. And if you're fortunate enough to get to work with some of the greats, you will thank yourself afterward that you've actually gotten your, just like you were talking about earlier, but you will thank yourself later once you actually realize what an extraordinary experience you're getting to do with some of these great conductors. So being visually there, and also keeping in mind that you are not a concerto soloist. You are not. You are part of this organization. You are part of the overall. You're one of many, many, many important parts of that ensemble, and you are not the most important part. And yes, the solo that we've been talking about on Mussorgsky does feature the saxophonist, but it is not me. It's not about me. I'm there with the bassoonist, right, and then I follow the cellist, and then I'm a subordinate to the oboe at one point in time. I'm directly in tune with the violins at one point, and yes, you get the last, sort of graceful note at the end, but it's not about you. It's about the organization. When you have done a great job, then the orchestra has done a great job, and that is something I think that's very, very important, and maybe difficult to understand unless you've actually gotten to live it a few times before. I don't know. And when I work with students and sort of prepare them for these kind of things, show up on time, be prepared, be cordial, be grateful for the opportunity. It may never come along again.
Yeah.
I played with the Cleveland Orchestra back in October, and that was a dream come true for me. I grew up in Ohio. That was the orchestra I knew of. It's Cleveland.
Right.
Are you kidding me? In Severance Hall. My God. But I hope I'll get to do it again. I really am. I'm so hopeful. I know I represented myself well, but you never know. And I'm grateful for that opportunity. I've been fortunate enough I've gone to Hong Kong and played with the Hong Kong Philharmonic probably 6 or 8 times now at this point.
Wow.
And I mean, talk about unbelievable. I'll never forget the moment I got that phone call, and I was like, this has got to be, it was an email, and this is another, I'm going to digress here for one moment, but I remember getting the email and thinking it was one of those like spam sort of, like, oh, my son plays the saxophone, and we live in X country, and we will wire you the money if we've all gotten these, right? And
yeah.
I hope, maybe someday they'll be true, but most of the time I don't think they are. But so. That's what I thought it was. I was like, we invite you to play with the Hong Kong Philharmonic. I'm like, what is wrong? What are you talking about? What do you mean? And sure enough, it was true. And it was, the first time was incredible, and every time since then has been unbelievable. I was there in November of this last year. And I mean, it's brilliant. It's just absolutely amazing. I can't complain. So, yeah. So
right.
I mean, so I think all of that kind of to say that you just have to be. You have to be there. You have to know what you're a part of, and sometimes you're woodwind, sometimes you're brass, sometimes you're string, and you need to know where you're molding and where you're shaping and what you're doing, and the halls are all different. When we were on the tour, every single hall that we performed in, we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I performed in 6 different concert halls.
Wow.
While we were there, and every single one of them was acoustically different.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The only one that I actually got to play in prior to the concert was the one in Paris. Everything else, we basically showed up, and the first note I played was the first time I ever played in the hall. And so you have to have your ears on and your eyes open, and
Wow.
Yeah. So, does that answer your question?
It does answer my question, and it starts my brain going on many more questions, because I'm trying to think of it a little bit from a student's perspective right now, okay. So, let me ask you about flexibility, because you mentioned conductors, and I know that. Whenever I've had a chance, there's been seems to be multiple conductors. It's never been the same here in Las Vegas. And what happens is that there seems to be like a when a conductor wants a particular sound from the saxophone, they're in the professional realm. They're not very shy in asking for it. They're pretty on point with this. This is exactly what I want. And I remember, when I did the Mussorgsky, specifically, that was one where he that last, I had done my dearest interpretation of that very final note, and he goes, no, I want it like this. And I want that to ring forever. So I want you to play that so fortissimo in that introduction, and then taper down. He told me exactly how he wanted it, and it came out exactly the way it should. I was very happy that it worked out that day. And you sit there and you go, and I can relate a little bit to the experience of just wanting it to be just right for the moment. But I did have to change a little bit of my playing. Have you noticed that with your experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm shaking my head vigorously right now.
Yes.
It's not your interpretation. It's the interpretation of the music director, whoever is standing on that podium at that point in time. And that doesn't mean that you're not a great saxophonist, and that doesn't mean that you can't have your own ideas on what that is. But if they ask you to do something, you do it. It's very simple. You do exactly what they ask of you, and the hope is that you find common ground, and the hope is that they can show you what they want through the baton, and that you can pick up on that very quickly. I think that's part of the eyes up and make sure you're watching and paying attention. But if they have to stop and say something, you do what they ask.
That's right.
And whether you think it should be fortissimo or not, it don't matter. And honestly, depending on the hall as well, we were in Vienna at the Music Verein, and in there it's such a live space that you can play that final note of Mussorgsky at a mezzo piano, and it rings perfectly in the hall, as if so you don't need to overplay it. So you have to use your ears and know that that's the right thing to do. And then the day before, we were in Milan playing a Scala, and there's no reverb. It's an opera house built in 1770, whatever, 75, we'll say. Please don't look that up. That's probably not correct. But it's somewhere around there. And it's built for singers, and it's built for specifically so that you can hear the enunciation of every single word, whether you're the furthest person away or the closest person. It's not built for an orchestra necessarily to be sitting on that stage playing Mussorgsky. So when you play that final note, you gotta play it. You gotta go for it. So I have absolutely worked with conductors. And one that comes to mind was with Chicago. It was Tim McAllister, myself, and I think Tom playing on An American in Paris with Leonard with Slatkin.
Oh yeah.
And he wanted us to do some things that I quite frankly had never done before, and we were all like, okay, well, we did them. And it was a little different, and it ended up being a really unique and wonderful experience. And I listened back to the recording, I'm like, that was really cool. And it wasn't how I had always necessarily played it. I had played that piece probably 80 times prior to that with David Robertson in the St. Louis Symphony, and with, I've done it with all kinds of people, Marian Alsop and all kinds of people, and it was just different, and it was his version, it was his idea, and it was wonderful. It was really wonderful. So we did what we were asked at that point in time, and so, yeah, absolutely. I've had a ton of experiences like that. When I work with Hong Kong, I've worked with Jaap van Zweden many times there, and the first time we did Bolero, it was like double time compared to what I was used to. And I was asked, can you play the tenor and soprano solos? And I was like, well, I don't really necessarily want to, but I'll do it. If you're going to fly me to the other side of the world, fine. I can't really say no, but when you have 5 beats to switch horns and you're going faster than you've ever thought possible, or you ever would have thought had been done prior, yeah. So you figure it out, and you do what's asked. You do what's asked,
that's right.
and you enjoy the ride. You enjoy the experience. I lovingly say, and I very proudly did my doctorate at the University of Illinois with Deborah Richtmeyer, who was a brilliant teacher and pedagogue, and also another leading orchestral saxophonist for many years with Dallas. And I learned a lot from her, but I remember telling her shortly after I played with Chicago the very first time, I just said, I am so proud to have my doctorate. I am so proud of writing that dissertation, but I have learned more sitting on one rehearsal with the Chicago Symphony than I did writing an entire dissertation. Opening my ears up and just listening to what was going on around me, I learned so much so quickly, and that's not a knock on writing a dissertation. It's just the real aspect of being involved in that musical process.
Oh man, that's just a different learning process, right?
Totally.
It's just completely different, and I think, and all worth it. I think having an experience can speak volumes of encyclopedias for one moment, just having an experience. And it's kind of, it sounds like with what you're talking about, it's kind of like that, oh, I get it.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to, we as educators, and probably many of the things that she had taught me, and John Sampin had taught me, and the other people that I've worked with had taught me, until you really do it, and it's the same thing with my own students, here at Roosevelt. I can tell them all of these things, and until they experience it for themselves, until they really feel what that feels like to either play with an orchestra or to have a successful performance doing X, Y, and Z.
Right.
It really does come down to that sort of learning in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's a really beautiful thing.
That was always my favorite statement when I was going through college was you want to do the X. Oh, but you just don't have enough experience. You want to do Y, but you'll understand it once you get experience. Like, well, how do you get experience?
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to go back to where we started, which was you started off as a and by the way, I want to ask you, while you were working for Selmer as a product specialist, did you have your doctorate at that time?
So my quick background, I grew up in Ohio. I started studying with John Sampin when I was in 8th grade, actually. I was very, very fortunate. I think I'm one of only one people that can probably say that. So, and then I did my undergrad in music education at Bowling Green with John, and went on to do my master's and doctorate at the University of Illinois with Deborah Richtmeyer. When I was working for Selmer, to answer your question, when I was working for Selmer, I had completed coursework for the doctorate. Mm-hmm. I was at that point I was ABD, so I was all but dissertation. So I had done all coursework, and I had done my preliminary examinations, but I had not actually completed the dissertation.
Right.
I completed the dissertation when I left Selmer, actually, when I left that organization and started teaching actually at the University of Illinois. I was brought back on an administrative position and a teaching position there, and got to teach alongside Deborah for a little over 4 years. And so during that time, I finished up finally. I finally, said, okay, enough is enough. It's time to get this done.
Seems to be just about every person I've ever run into that exalts the dissertation. It's funny, isn't it? It's like that one moment in time where it's like, time to get it done.
Yeah, it's the one and only time in academia that you have to. And maybe people will think I'm wrong on this, but I think it's the one time in academia that you actually have to be self-motivated. There's no other motivation there. It's you have to. There's no one holding your hand to say, complete the dissertation, please write this, we want to read it. You really have to. You have to do it for yourself, and there's not really the same deadlines that are there for that kind of safety net of when you're going through and doing coursework and you have an assignment and you write a paper and there's a deadline and there's firm kind of deadlines for all that kind of stuff. With a dissertation, there's not. And so I think a lot of people get, I'll do it next year. And it's hard. And just to, to have the time to do it too. It takes time. It takes time. So, yeah.
Well, that's good. I don't have mine yet. And I say yet because it may be on the future. Who knows? But I do know this, that as I see people who are working through that's a very, very similar effect, and I'm going to take that to note as well, because
I've got one more for you. One
Sure.
of the wisest things that someone on my committee said when I was completing the dissertation said, a successful dissertation is a completed dissertation. And I took that to heart. It doesn't have to be your life's work. My life's work is not my dissertation. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud that I have the doctorate. I'm extraordinarily proud that I have the doctorate. But my life's work is not that. My life's work is playing and teaching.
Right.
And the doctorate has provided me, a level that, in the collegiate teaching realm that I may have not had otherwise. But it's not everything. It's there as a something that for many, it's a great added addition to your sort of portfolio, but it's not the see all end all necessarily. So
yeah. And you hear people reference the doctorate as the piece of paper, and it's interesting. The way that you're talking about it is that it's not just this step, but it also seems to be a personal part of the journey that you had to overcome in order, that I just think that there's some things that you go through. Like personally, I don't have a doctorate, so for me to speak on it or be able to say I don't even have that experience or that personal experience, I just get to ask people about it. And so when I hear you talk about it, it's like a lot of colleagues who have gone through the process. It's not just a piece of paper. It turned out to be a journey that may not have, it may have hit a couple of different areas other than the intended, here's my topic, I will talk intelligently about my topic, and now it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I'm very, very proud to have a doctorate, and it is absolutely a part of my journey. Yeah. But it's one part.
Right.
It's not a you get that document, that piece of paper, quote unquote, and it's not a fix all. It's not that moment that you get that piece of paper, then your life is set all of a sudden. It's not that easy. So,
right.
So yeah, I think that you just need to have realistic. I mean, if anyone wants to do it, they need to have realistic expectations as to what that is. And like I said, I'm very, very proud of the work that I did on my doctorate, and I'm very proud of where I have my doctorate from. And I'm very, it is a rite of passage of sorts, but it's one of my steps towards my career and towards what I love to do.
Yeah. Love hearing this, and I think our listeners are loving hearing this right now, because I and I appreciate you being so open about your experiences. I think that when, entirely why I like being the host of this podcast is I get to, I get to provoke some of these stories in a way, in my way, and sometimes it's a little selfish because I just want to know, and I don't even know if our listeners really want to know some of this information, but I do enjoy, I enjoy this process of hearing stories, and you're really, thank you so much. I think right now my students and I are going to officially start breaking out those excerpts with a little bit more of a fervor right now, because I love what you said about comparing the dissertation to, in that experience, the academic, just exercise or whatever it happens to be. This whole encompassing academic nature experience versus that sitting in with the orchestra, and you sit there and you go, you know what? That's something that we should all be striving for, is that opportunity to be able to have those experiences and have it teach us. But you have to be ready. And so I want to go a little bit further with my teaching and making sure that we're ready for those experiences. And I
think that personally with my students, and although I teach a conservatory and I work with many of my colleagues are in the Chicago Symphony, so I'm very fortunate, and we have a really wonderful wind ensemble and also orchestra here at CCPA, Chicago College of Performing Arts, and one of the things that we do work on at least once a year, if not each semester, is orchestral excerpts. I assign all my students excerpts to work on, and I think it's a really important part of what we do.
Yeah.
And I want my students to be prepared for that, but I also, they may or may not get the opportunity to play with an orchestra, but the goal is not necessarily for them to be playing with the Chicago Symphony. The goal is for them is to know the repertoire, to know it exists, to be aware, to know the tonality that they're going to have to be performing with, and if they get that opportunity, great. It's just another way of them learning their instrument, and their instrument includes wind band, and of course it includes all these amazing solos that we have, and quartet and jazz and everything. This instrument is so incredible because of the versatility of it, but the orchestra is also a big part of that, and actually the reason the instrument was there to begin with. So I really do think it's a big part of our history, and I think it's really important for us to work on that sound of being inside the orchestra, which is different than playing inside of a wind ensemble. So
yes, and so that's on the docket for me, and I know for several out there. And hey, if you happen to be a high schooler, listen to this right now. What a perfect time to go out. There's a couple of books of saxophone orchestral excerpts. Order them and start playing along with some CDs and see what you can do. I think that's that right now would be a perfect way to work on tone, I think one of the ones that really got me was the L'Arsienne suite, the Bizet, some of the solos in there. So, but I want to move on to one other thing here is that you are doing something else for this greater saxophone community in being a part of the board for NASA.
Yeah, I am.
And in fact, how we reconnected up there at Midwest, I saw you at the NASA booth, and getting some people interested to see what's happening with the organization. I know it's an absolutely wonderful organization that, of course, promotes saxophone and promotes such a collegiality across the board for through all the competitions and then all the clinicking and then concertizing that happens at the conferences. It's such a great thing for us to experience. But I know that we're getting in this season we're seeing a lot of regionals that are happening out and around. So you're doing the marketing, right?
Yeah, so I've always been involved with NASA, the North American Saxophone Alliance, and anyone who wants to join, saxophonealliance.org is the place that you can go, and it's all about the network. It's all about, and I have to say, oh gosh, I'm not going to put a percentage on it. A large portion of what we do in the music world is about the network, and so the expectation is that you can play your instrument well. The expectation is that you play all the right notes and rhythms. There are many people who can play right notes and rhythms, so the network comes into play and many other aspects of that. So the saxophone community at large, our organization, North American Saxophone Alliance, is, to me, extraordinarily important. And I joined as a student. I continued into all the way through grad school, and of course continued into my professional life as well. I was very fortunate to get to co-host the 2014 National Conference at the University of Illinois with my then colleague and former teacher, of course, Deborah Richtmeyer. We got to actually co-host that event, and at the time, and I still think we hold the title, not that it's a competition, but if it were, we won. We co-hosted. It was not a competition, everyone. That was a joke. And I'm the only one laughing. That's okay.
I'm laughing. I'm right there. I'm right there with you. That's all right.
So we co-hosted, and we had about almost 1,400 saxophonists on our campus.
Wow.
And so we really got to have a great time with the overall organization and the community. And we put a lot of work in, and our blood, sweat, and tears into that thing.
That's a lot of work.
Shortly thereafter, I was nominated and then won the position as secretary on the executive board of NASA. And then in 2015, at the end of 2015, as we were gearing up for the 2016 conference that happened down in Texas, the person who had been doing the marketing position, the director of marketing position, stepped down sort of suddenly, and I was asked by the executive committee if I would be willing, with my work previously in sort of more marketing kind of roles with Selmer and Van Doren, if I would be willing, and then of course having hosted the 2014 conference, if I'd be willing to do the role as director of marketing. And so I stepped down from the executive board and became the director of marketing for North American Saxophone Alliance, which is an ongoing position that I hold. And it's great. I really love working with the organization. I love promoting what we do. I love talking to young saxophonists and telling them about how they can basically just come and hang out and hear really great music and get to meet a ton of people, and you get firsthand. I mean, you walk through the conference and you have literally living legends walking beside you.
That's right.
When you're there, and so, I think it's a really important part of what we do, and I'm happy. Again, I'm very humbled, but I'm very happy to be a small part of the success of that organization as well as the marketing director. So.
Yeah, that's. I'm so glad you're doing that role. I'm so glad that the progress that has happened with NASA is just absolutely astounding, and the impact it's had is really priceless. I think anytime I've been involved with a conference, it's been such a joy to make all those connections. Learn and just learn about people. I think one of the people that really got extremely encouraging that I had never had a chance to run into prior to meeting him at the New Mexico Regional was Thomas Liley. And what a dear man, and he's now passed, but his legacy goes on. I think NASA actually publishes a couple of the books that he's written, and I never would have had that experience being able to stand next to him. And just all the encouraging words that you get from colleagues like Dr. Liley. That was and I remember specifically having hosted the regional in Las Vegas, getting to read the letter that he wrote to my DC at the time. And you sit there and you go, wow, these are the kind of people that are really in our world. So
yeah.
So yeah. And I think that that's the best part about it. I think anybody who goes to a regional and performs at a regional or just goes to listen is going to get a whole swath of good things that come out of it.
Yeah, no, I'm on the Tom Liley part. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think he was one of the kindest human beings that I ever came into contact with, and I met Tom when I was working at Van Doren, actually at a Van Doren party, and of course had read his articles for years and introduced myself, and we got to know each other, and yeah, I miss his presence at all of those kind of events. I miss seeing him. I saw him every year at Midwest. We would always have a nice conversation, and I agree. Those are the kind of memories you keep, because you get to meet these sort of individuals through NASA, which is so great. And I completely agree. Performing at the NASA conferences is, of course, wonderful. We all want that opportunity, and you want to show your colleagues what you're up to and all of that kind of stuff. Yes, of course.
Right.
However, it's also great to just go and listen and network and hang and just sort of see what everybody's up to. And it's that one time a year when you can just get together with all of your, I keep saying family, but I mean it, your family, and just kind of see each other. And I don't know, it's a really wonderful thing for students, young and old alike. I mean, it's such, I can't stress how important it is to get involved, and not only, yes, the competitions. I mean, we do such great things with those competitions, and there's some new initiatives that are continuing to be looked at. But the great thing about the organization is that it's run by saxophonists for saxophonists, and yeah, we'd all love to have maybe more stuff going on, but everyone who's involved with that organization does it because we love it, and because we really want the organization to be there for our students and for our colleagues, and for sort of the future generations to kind of when Fred Hemke started that organization, I think he had this mindset of, and I haven't asked him this necessarily, although I'll see him in a couple of weeks, but of kind of handing that on to that next generation, and it's been in turn handed again. And so I sort of, I feel like we're that next kind of group of individuals that's just caring for this really precious kind of organization, this kind of precious family that we have. So yeah, it's great. And yes, I mean, I'm proud of some of the things that we've started to implement, a new website, and there's new things going on. I mean, that was our first for us. You said that we got to see each other at Midwest, and that's absolutely true. It was a first for NASA to actually exhibit at Midwest, and I'm pleased that we were able to do some of those kind of things. And the regionals are right around the corner. Those are coming up some of them are starting soon. Yeah. They'll go from mid-February through May or so, and then we'll have our big biennial conference next year in 2018, and there's going to be information out about that really soon.
Good. So there's the place has and where and what has not been necessarily released yet?
Well, we that's sort of true. We announced where it was going to be at the last biennial conference. However, there was some really constructive and good feedback from some people in the organization that they did not want to see it at a convention center, which is where we had sort of thought it was moving because of the size of the organization.
Okay.
So it took us some time to sort of find a spot that is able to house our organization.
Not many universities have that, not only the facilities, but the forces available to be able to support.
Yeah, this is true. It's a big undertaking. So, and yes, I personally do know where that is, and however, I'm not exactly sure if that has been announced yet. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave you hanging.
Wow.
What I can say.
Wow, we almost got you to break some news on the Modern Sax podcast. Wow.
And what I will say is, I think it's going to be a great conference, and I think. As they all are, and I think people will be very pleased with the location. So,
well, good. Well, there you go. I guess
Look,
we'll
check your emails.
We're gonna have to check our emails and all right.
Join the organization. Make sure you join.
Yes.
Your membership is up to date, and then you will get an email about it. So.
And folks, it's not very expensive to be a part of the organization, and the benefit is absolutely enormous. And you know, if you're going to support an organization through paying some dues, which is part of being a musician, in some way, shape, or form, this is definitely one of the best, and well worth what you put into it, and well worth any kind of investment.
Well, I mean, we are extraordinarily inexpensive to join, quite frankly, in comparison to a lot of our peer sort of groups out there, and we do that on purpose, actually, because we really do want as many people to join that can. I think student memberships, if I remember correctly, for a 1-year membership for students is $25. $25.
That's ridiculous.
So, and you also get access to all of the online things, and of course our the Saxophone Symposium, which is the scholarly publication.
Right.
And I think if I remember correctly, a 2-year is only $40, so you get a discount if you do the 2-year. And I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer.
Exactly.
So.
And for, you know, this is the organization for America, but I think North America, pretty much. Right. This is the one that's operating fully here. So yes, get in tune with it, and get that membership, and get to check out where the regionals are, and get there. I'm sure that a lot of the programming has already been set, but at this point, if you haven't had an experience, it's time to go out and get one.
Agreed.
Well, I've got to say, this has been an absolutely awesome conversation, and I'm just so happy that you've come on the show and shared your experiences with us, and I just want to give you the floor. Just if any of our listeners would like to get a hold of you, or find you, or any websites, could you mind giving them anything? Any of that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would prefer. No, I'm joking. Yeah, absolutely. My website is michaelholmesmusic.com, so my contact information is on there. And like I said, I teach at Roosevelt University here in Chicago. It's Chicago College of Performing Arts. Mm-hmm. And if anyone has questions or anything, I'm happy to give my email, which is mh, my initials, .michaelholmes@gmail.com. And yeah, shoot me an email. I'd love to chat about the saxophone. So.
Yes, you do. And I too love chatting about saxophone.
You do too, Mark. And you do too.
Apparently. and so you can reach The Modern Saxophonist. Go to our website, www.themodernsaxophonist.com. themodernsaxophonist@gmail.com is our email, and also like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter @The Modern Sax, and I'm going to throw this out there, guys. Any feedback? Sometimes us here in the digital world of saxophone, we just don't hear back enough feedback. I think everybody's busy. I get it. Take the 2 seconds to write some thoughts, write something, say something, and one of the best places to do that is on our iTunes, the iTunes store, and just leave us a 5-star and a comment. And the more that you do that, the more saxophonists are going to find us. And I think at this point, there's so many people like Michael Holmes coming on to talk and really give of their time, and it would be incredible if we got some more young listeners and old, and just everybody that could come across. I've noticed that we've here's how the numbers work, folks. We end up picking up a listener, and they just listen to all the episodes. like probably within a week or two. It's just kind of like a Netflix binge. You get through and you get going. It's so amazing how that happens, and I see it happen on our numbers. So look, we're slowly growing, but I know there's more saxophonists out there that haven't been able to hear about us. So one of the easy things you can do is share as well. So anyway, that was a long diatribe just to self-promote, get this podcast out there. But I think for good reason, because when we talk, have conversations like what we just had, there's somebody that's going to be more inspired to pick up their saxophone, to do the work, and to just fulfill their dreams someday. And I think in today's day and age, we need those people that stand next to us, but we also need to hear from people like Michael here to be able to keep us encouraged and keep us going. And so share.
Enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride, people.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, honestly.
And with that, let's get practicing. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Modern Saxophonist Podcast. You can find us at www.themodernsaxophonist.com. We're also on Twitter @themodernsax.